Hey everybody, Jonathan Bailor back with another Calorie Myth show. Very excited to bring you a video broadcast with one of my favorite doctors in the world, someone whose work I follow for a very long time and I've personally admired for a very long time. She's a friend of the show. She's been on the show before, but never via video, and just had such a great time chatting with her the first time. And given her epic new book, The Wahls Protocol, we had to have her back on. You've heard of her. You love her as much as I do. She's a clinical professor of medicine at the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine in Iowa City. Dr. Terry Wahls, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Very glad to be here.
Well, Dr. Terry, I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are familiar with your story, so let's just do a quick recap of why so many people know who you are and have been touched by you and your story.
Sure. So I have multiple sclerosis, secondary progressive. That's the phase of the disease that we have steady decline. You don't expect to recover. And I tried all sorts of conventional drugs from the best people without benefit. Through my research, I created a nutrition protocol and meditation, electrical stimulation. And within the year, I was up walking again without a cane, on my bike, able to do an 18-mile bike ride. It changed how I practice. It changed my clinical research focus. And I began teaching the public. Then in 2011, I did a TEDx talk, Minding Your Mitochondria, in which I explained my story and the nutrition side of my protocol, which I believe last check had 1.6 million views. So it's certainly helped get the message out to the public.
Dr. Terry, what I want to focus on in this show, because I know you're going to be answering the same basic questions over and over again for the next 6 weeks, is I'm amazed you are as hardcore of a clinician, and like anyone who knows you, you're not like a scammy marketer, a bright lights, flashy kind of person. You're about medicine, you're about science. So what has this journey been like in terms of going from the most hardcore clinical practice to being debilitated in a wheelchair to, doing media and launching a national book? What's that like?
Well, it's a huge readjustment. You have to keep redefining who you are. As I became more disabled, the university redesigned my job several times, so I was able to continue working. And then as I began to find functional medicine, look for more integrated medicines, the nutrition, vitamin supplements, learning more about ancestral health, etc. And then experiencing what that meant to me health-wise on a cellular level, it was phenomenal. And I tell people that it's really, in some ways, like Paul, who was struck down on the way to Damascus. The person who was the conventional doc who relied entirely on the latest, newest drugs and procedures got struck down. And I realized that the money is in teaching people about diet and lifestyle, because people really are willing and very eager to use non-drug means to restore their health. So it certainly has changed my view of disease and health. It's changed how I teach the residents and the medical students. I still talk biochemistry, but now we're talking biochemistry about food and how we can change our chemistry, our physiology by food, meditation, and exercise practices.
How are your peers receiving this new message?
Well, it's been interesting over time. So, I become severely disabled. Then I recover, and we end up doing a medical grand rounds on my case. So I present my case, I explain the physiology of what I think happened, what I think the mechanisms were, and the critical role of diet and electrical stimulation in the recovery. My colleagues either loved that grand rounds or thought it was just crazy, and got a lot of criticism. But one of the things it did do, it got me interested in writing the grant, writing the proposal to test this in others. And the dean of the medical school facilitated getting some senior scientists on my study team. And to everyone's surprise, we secured our funding. We started the clinical trial, and that's been going on since 2010.
Wow.
So every year we have 2 meetings, the Internal Medicine Research Day, the Carver College of Medicine Research Day, where my research team has a couple posters up talking about the status of our research. And because our research is showing this amazing level of compliance, great safety data, and really quite remarkable improvements on fatigue. And now we're also showing the changes in gait. So we have some videos that we show. We're getting a lot of attention. And so I'm going around the university giving research seminars. I'm now going around the country talking about my work as well to clinicians. And the clinicians want data, and that's what I have now. I have very exciting data.
Dr. Terry, help us understand the mind of the clinician who sees your personal example, which is undeniable, and sees their again, I didn't go to medical school. I might be missing something here, but my understanding of the Wahls protocol is eat the foods that provide you with the most of things that have been demonstrated as essential for life. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and the least of things which have been deemed quite toxic. How can't that be helpful from a medicinal perspective? How could anyone doubt that? I don't I mean,
I was very careful in how I wrote the book so that it's very lay friendly, and yet we have the science behind it. And then we did a nutritional analysis of our menus and show the 31 nutrients that science has said are critical to brain cells. And we show how the standard American diet stacks up. Then we show how my 3 diet plans stack up. And of course, it's incredibly nutrient dense. We are flooding the cells with the stuff your brain cells need. And actually very similar ratios to what the hunter-gatherers who are still eating the wild foods are. So again, I found that very reassuring. So the clinicians who take time to read the book will end up having to say, well, it certainly can't hurt you. This looks incredibly safe, incredibly health promoting.
Yep.
The clinicians who don't take the time to read the book and say, well, this doc got her health restored, there must have been a diagnostic mistake because nobody with secondary progressive MS gets better. So the usual criticism is it surely must have been a mistake. To that end, we can say the MS Center, internationally recognized Mellon Center at the Cleveland Clinic, made the mistake, as did some centers in Wisconsin and in Iowa. So I think there's no question really about the diagnosis, but it's hard for people to give up their current paradigm. I certainly am confident, though, with 1.6 million people seeing that TED Talk, that a lot of physicians had to answer the patient's question saying, well, what about nutrition? Is it going to hurt me to eat all these vegetables? Is it going to hurt me to eat grass-fed meat and organ meat and seaweed? Will that hurt me, doc? And the docs will have to say, well, no, and it would probably be really pretty good for you.
Dr. Wahls, you've seen obviously individuals who have been in the medical field, in the clinical field, in the biochemical field for a long time, and then you're also training the up and coming generation. Do you see significant differences in the approach of, let's say, the established generation of clinicians and MDs and the newer generation?
When I lecture the first-year students, second-year students, I'd say most of those kids are incredibly thrilled and impassioned about the concepts I talk about. Health promoting diet and lifestyle is critical to their health so they can get through medical school and residency, in that they need to be masters of those skills so they will teach them to their patients. And the senior physicians, I'd say 6 years ago, really didn't know what to make of me. But my stature just continues to grow as our data improves, and I find that my senior clinicians, my colleagues, are getting much more interested. In fact, the Veterans Hospital that I work at asked me to create a lifestyle clinic that would be focusing entirely on treating autoimmune disease, chronic diseases through diet and lifestyle. It's been a huge success, and we're figuring out how to grow those clinics.
And I'm sure you've heard You mentioned the ancestral lifestyle. Certainly,
Yes.
a lot of the people who are fans of your book are also fans of the ancestral lifestyle. What has been the feedback from the various, let's call them sects on the internet, the vegetarian community, the lower carb community,
Sure.
and the paleo ancestral community? What are their thoughts about your approach?
The paleo ancestral community certainly is very excited by my work. They were thrilled when we talked, and they've had advanced copies of the book, so they see the nutritional analysis and see how far out of the ballpark we hit it. The vegetarian community had reached out to me wanting to have a vegetarian version of the Wahls diet, which I did provide, and I provided a vegan version. I tell them how to do the vegetarian vegan diet in a much more safe way, reducing the anti-nutrients. And I explain if they're enjoying great health, that's fine. They can stay vegetarian vegan. But if they have health challenges that I discuss, then I invite them to consider adding animal proteins and why. We talk about sprouting, things to do to reduce the anti-nutrients from their vegan foods. The MS community comes in two groups. Certainly, I'm a hero to many, many, many people with MS. And then there are folks who are very attached to the conventional way of thinking, find this quite threatening, and accuse me of taking advantage of desperate people, which I think is very sad. I'm just trying to give desperate people the tools to take control of their lives.
So help me to understand the psychology of the people who think you're trying to take advantage. Because if I understand, again, the Wahls protocol is simply saying, eat a lot of vegetables, eat the cleanest, most high quality, nutrient dense. It's basically saying eat the most nutrient dense plant products and animal products. That's it. It's just saying.
Yes, that's the key message.
How can anyone criticize you for that?
Well, because they don't take the time to learn what the message is, and their feeling is surely if solving autoimmune problems was this simple, somebody else would have discovered ahead of time. The doctors wouldn't be prescribing these incredibly expensive, medicines that cost $30,000 to $60,000 a year with a huge list of side effects. Physicians wouldn't be relying on that if it was as easy as Dr. Wahls says to recover our health. And so it's hard for them to open their mind. We call that pre-contemplative. They're not ready.
Yeah, a little bit of.
It's sad, but they're not ready, and we just have to let go of that.
In the let's call it the internet community of nutrition discussion, it's very easy to get. There's a lot of detail. Let's say there's a lot of detail out there. What have you found in your own personal experience and in your clinical practice to be the things that give you the 90, or is there, if you do these three things, is it just eating more vegetables? What is the thing that you think, the three things that really make that difference?
So one, you have to take away the most troublesome anti-nutrients. And I talk about gluten, dairy, and eggs as being the three that I identify as most troublesome. Then the next thing you need to do is pour in the maximal nutrients. And that really is a lot of green leaves, some sulfur-rich vegetables, and color, so that the enzymes that process and eliminate toxins are all operating at optimal capacity. And then you'll want to be sure that you have organ meats and some high-quality animal proteins. Again, because that really improves the efficiency of your mitochondria. And so you have more of the stuff that's really good for you, and you take away, make it easy for your body to eliminate the stuff that's bad for you. And I'd say that's the key concept.
And are you would you figure, it really, this has been my number one fascination over the past 3 years, is how it seems like almost people want to make it more complicated than it is. It sounds like what you're saying is eat deep colored vegetables in mass and eat the highest quality sources of protein and fat in the world. And just do that and just focus on doing that. Don't focus on this powder or this magic pill or all this other stuff.
I could not agree more. As soon as you start taking pills, supplements, you have to worry about getting the ratios for your nutrients incorrect, getting your minerals out of whack, getting some of your fat soluble vitamins out of whack. Food is much safer. In supervised supplements for specific issues can be done. But when we start taking protein powders and all these other supplements, you can accidentally create problems for yourself.
And when we talk about supplements, I've found that there's a supplement, which is a engineered non-food, and then there's vegetables, clearly not a supplement, and then there are these things in the middle, like let's say desiccated beef liver, or spirulina powder, or these types of, what do you think about that, or cod liver oil?
Okay.
What do you think about those?
So in my book, I have a terrific chapter on supplements, and we go through many of those, why to consider them, why not. Powdered kelp, dulse flakes, seaweed certainly is part of the protocol for the mineral and chelating benefits. I talk about my favorite pond scum, also known as algae, and why I think that's very helpful to use and how to safely incorporate that. And for the people who cannot figure out how to make organ meats taste great, and they do taste great when you know how to prepare them, I do talk about desiccated liver and the liver capsules. So absolutely, I think there can be a role, and the roles are best if they're food-based, and particularly if there's been a history, preferably of thousands of years, of a culture using that food product. So fermented cod liver oil, great product. I talk about that. Powdered algae also has been used for thousands of years. Great products. I talk about that. The powdered seaweeds or dulse flakes, just because they're more convenient to cook with, I talk about those. But taking the magnesium, zinc capsules. I talk about why you might, when you're carefully supervised, find those things helpful. But if you take, for example, you've heard that zinc is great for your brain, so you take a bunch of zinc, and then you will make yourself copper deficient and create problems with your iron metabolism. So I try to educate people on the potential risks of supplementing without some guidance.
That's one of the things that I love most about your work, because I have a bit of a confirmation bias because it's so central to my work, and that's the brilliant homeostatic nature of the body, and how when we try to, like when you overdo zinc, copper falls off, and somehow before we even knew what zinc or copper was and we just ate things found in nature, we happen to stay sufficient in these things. How I mean, maybe it's because we're scientists and we love to try to deconstruct things and outsmart the human body. But what do your peers say when you're talking about just eat food, the body will heal itself, you don't need to deconstruct everything? What do they say?
Well, my nutrition colleagues are incredibly excited that they've got a physician here who's so interested in a nutrient-dense diet as a method of healing. And now I'm having other professors come, and we're writing collaborative studies. So we just submitted a study testing the Wahls diet in fibromyalgia, which affects, by the way, 4 million people, and I expect it to do extraordinarily well. I'm having conversations with colleagues who study Parkinson's and obesity. So my colleagues are seeing my tremendous success with implementation and compliance, and then these really very exciting outcomes that we're showing. So I anticipate that we'll be studying the Wahls diet in more disease states.
Fabulous. And do you see a world where, certainly the book is called The Wahls Diet. Right now it's known as The Wahls Diet, but in many ways it's almost the common sense diet. I mean, certainly there's some nuance to it, but a lot like what you're saying, what I'm saying, what some of the ancestral community is saying, the message of nutrient density seems self-evident. Do you see a day when it's just like that's how people eat, or that's what's healthy?
What I think we're helping identify is that it's nutrient density is the key factor. And so when people are making dietary claims that my diet is X, Y, or Z, what we want you to do is give me a menu. Let's do the nutritional analysis. So we'll make the menu according to your rules, then we'll do the nutritional analysis, and does it hit the 31 nutrients we know brain cells need? And if it does, okay, you've got a diet that works. If it doesn't, you better tinker with it some more, because your plan is going to lead to health problems for these people. And so we could test all these diets to figure out which ones, and there should be many that will meet all of our nutrients, so that people, when they follow a diet plan, they can feel confident they're going to have great health.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Dr. Terry, because so often conversations about nutrition actually aren't about nutrition. They may be about morality or reflecting, and that's fine. Like if you are saying eat this way because it's more humane, you could be right. but don't conflate a more humane diet with a more nutrient-dense diet. Like, they have different goals and outcomes, right?
Well, correct. And the American Heart Diet, the ADA diet, nobody's really created a menu plan and done a nutritional analysis of what those plans will deliver. And very few diets have done that. And it's time that we have the rigor and demand that and expect that, so we know how to create the optimal diet.
Brilliant. Well, speaking of rigorous academic endeavors, over the next month or 6 weeks, you're certainly going to be doing some more mainstream and media endeavors with your new book coming out. So tell us a little bit about the new book and what's next for you.
Okay, so the book is called The Wahls Protocol: How I Beat Progressive MS Using Paleo Principles in Functional Medicine. You can go to my website, terrywahls.com, and download the free materials we talked about in the book. You can get this, of course, at any of the bookstores. In the book, I talk about the story of my decline, my discovery of creating this intervention, and then my amazing recovery. We create the food plans. The first plan, which is the Wahls diet, which you could do as a vegetarian or vegan if you wanted. The Wahls Paleo, which clearly more animal protein, organ meat, seaweed. And then the Wahls Paleo Plus, which is a ketogenic version of the diet. And we explain why you might want to go to the ketogenic version or not. Then we talk about the stress-reducing activities, talk about exercise, electrical stimulation, terrific chapter on supplements, another chapter on talking to your doc, what kind of lab tests would be useful to monitor that your primary care doc could get, and that they would probably feel very comfortable helping you follow. We talk about how to talk to your doc about these things and these concepts, and that most primary care docs will in fact be thrilled to hear you're going to eat more vegetables, organ meats, and aloe seaweed to your diet. They should feel very comfortable with that. And I also talked about how to talk to your subspecialists about your autoimmune or other chronic health problems. And we talk about functional medicine. And then in the appendices, we have our menus, our recipes. And then for the physicians and nutrition experts, we have this wonderful research quality nutritional analysis of those menus, so people know the 31 nutrients I said are critical for your brain, and how we deliver that in the standard American diet, and then in the Wahls diet, the Wahls Paleo, and Wahls Paleo Plus. And two more chapters I think are very important is really teaching people why the conventional look at autoimmune diseases, and then the functional medicine look at autoimmune diseases, how leaky gut, nutrition, mitochondria efficiency, toxins, stress hormone balance, all create the environment where the autoimmunity happens. That 95% of the reason people develop a chronic illness, any autoimmune problem, is based on diet and lifestyle choices, which means if you address those, you should be able to dramatically reduce your symptoms, likely need fewer drugs, and quite possibly do very well off drugs given enough time and enough healing.
Brilliant. Well, Dr. Terry, I so appreciate, as always, speaking with you, the example you provide and the clinical and research rigor you provide to this critical topic. So thank you, and best of luck with what I know will be an epic launch.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Listeners and viewers, I hope you enjoyed this wonderful chat as much as I did. Again, our guest today is the delightful and brilliant Dr. Terry Wahls. Be sure to check her out online. Just search your favorite search engine for Terry Wahls, and be sure to check out her new book, I know I will, The Wahls Protocol. And remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Chat with you soon.